Tulsi Gabbard is an American politician and military veteran serving as the U.S. representative for Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District since 2013. She is a member of the Democratic Party. First elected in 2012, she became the first Samoan American and the first Hindu member of the United States Congress. Gabbard served in a field medical unit of the Hawaii Army National Guard in a combat zone in Iraq from 2004 to 2005 and was deployed to Kuwait from 2008 to 2009. She served in the Hawaii House of Representatives from 2002 to 2004. When she was elected to the Hawaii House of Representatives at age 21, Gabbard was the youngest woman to be elected to a U.S. state legislature. Gabbard was a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee from 2013 to 2016, when she resigned to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination. Gabbard opposed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. She is critical of interventionism in Iraq, Libya, and Syria. She supports abortion rights, Medicare for all, and same-sex marriage. Gabbard is a candidate for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States in 2020. Early life and education. Gabbard was born on April 12, 1981, in Laloaloa, Mauputasi County, on American Samoa's main island of Tutuila. She was the fourth of 5 children born to Mike Gabbard and his wife Carol Gabbard. In 1983, when Gabbard was 2 years old, her family moved to Hawaii. Her father is a member of the Hawaii Senate. Gabbard was raised in a multicultural and multireligious household. Her father is of Samoan and European ancestry and an active lector at his Catholic church. Her mother, who was born in Decatur, Indiana, is of German descent and a practicing Hindu. Gabbard chose Hinduism as her religion while she was a teenager. Gabbard was homeschooled through high school except for 2 years at a Christian missionary academy for girls in the Philippines. She graduated from Hawaii Pacific University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration in 2009. Military service. In April 2003, while serving in the state legislature, Gabbard enlisted in the Hawaii Army National Guard. In July 2004, she volunteered for a 12-month tour in Iraq, serving as a medical operations specialist and a military police officer with the 29th Support Battalion Medical Company. Gabbard served at Logistical Support Area Anaconda in Iraq, completing her tour in 2005. Anaconda had the nickname Mortaritaville because of the high frequency of Iraqi insurgent mortars targeting it. In 2006, Gabbard began serving as a legislative aide for U.S. Senator Daniel Akaka in Washington, D.C., and in March 2007 she graduated from the Accelerated Officer Candidate School at the Alabama Military Academy. Gabbard was the first woman to finish as the Distinguished Honor Graduate in the Academy's 50-year history. This award, signifying distinguished leadership and academic ability, is given to one top candidate per state in each OCS class and presented by the authority of the Department of the Army and the Air Force, National Guard Bureau. The Accelerated program is the most physically and mentally demanding program. She was commissioned as a second lieutenant and assigned again to the 29th Brigade Special Troops Battalion of the Hawaii Army National Guard, this time to serve as an Army military police officer. She was deployed to Kuwait from 2008 to 2009. On October 12, 2015, Gabbard was promoted from captain to major at a ceremony at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. Akaka administered the oath of office to the new major. She continues to serve as a major in the Hawaii Army National Guard. On August 7, 2018, the Honolulu Star-Advertiser reported that the Hawaii Army National Guard had instructed Gabbard that a video of her in uniform on her ʻtʌlsi Facebook page did not comply with military ethics rules. Gabbard's campaign removed the video and added a disclaimer to the website's banner image of Gabbard in uniform in a veterans cemetery that the image does not imply an endorsement from the military. A similar situation had happened during a previous Gabbard congressional campaign. A spokeswoman for Gabbard said the campaign would work closely with the Department of Defense to ensure compliance with all regulations. Military decorations and badges. Political career. Hawaii House of Representatives. In 2002, after redistricting, Gabbard ran to represent the 42nd House District of the Hawaii House of Representatives. She won the four-candidate Democratic primary with a plurality of 48% of the vote over Rida Cabanilla. Gabbard then defeated Republican Alfonso Jimenez in the general election, 65% to 35%. At the age of 21, Gabbard became the youngest legislator ever elected in Hawaii's history and the youngest woman ever elected to a U.S. state legislature. In 2004, Gabbard filed for re-election, but then volunteered for Army National Guard service in Iraq. Cabanilla, who filed to run against her, called on the incumbent to resign because she would not be able to represent her district from Iraq. Gabbard chose not to campaign for a second term, and Cabanilla won the Democratic primary, 64% to 25%. Honolulu City Council. After returning home from her second deployment to the Middle East in 2009, Gabbard ran for a seat on the Honolulu City Council. Incumbent City Councilman Rod Tam, of the 6th District, decided to retire in order to run for mayor of Honolulu. In the 10-candidate nonpartisan open primary in September 2010, Gabbard finished first with 33% of the vote. In the November 2nd runoff election, she defeated Sesnita Moapono, 58% to 42%. As a Honolulu City Councilwoman, Gabbard introduced a measure to help food truck vendors by loosening parking restrictions. She also introduced Bill 54, a measure that authorized city workers to confiscate personal belongings stored on public property with 24 hours notice to its owner. After overcoming opposition from the American Civil Liberties Union and Occupy Hawaii, Bill 54 passed and became City Ordinance 1129. On April 30, 2011, Gabbard informed her constituents that she was resuming the use of her birth name, Tulsi Gabbard, and that there would be no cost to city taxpayers for reprinting city council materials containing her name. She resigned from the council on August 16, 2012, to focus on her congressional campaign. United States House of Representatives elections. In early 2011, Mazie Hirono, the incumbent Democratic U.S. representative for Hawaii's 2nd congressional district, announced that she would run for the United States Senate. In May 2011, Gabbard announced her candidacy for Hirono's House of Representatives seat. She was endorsed by the Sierra Club, Emily's List and VoteVets.org. The Democratic mayor of Honolulu, Mufi Hanman, was the best-known candidate in the 6-way primary, but Gabbard won with 62,882 votes. The Honolulu Star-Advertiser called her win an improbable rise from a distant underdog to victory. Gabbard resigned from the city council on August 16 to prevent the cost of holding a special election. As the Democratic nominee, Gabbard traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina, and spoke at the 2012 Democratic National Convention. She credited grassroots support as the reason for her come-from-behind win in the primary. Gabbard won the general election on November 6, 2012, defeating Republican Kawika Crowley by 168,503 to 40,707 votes. In December 2012, Gabbard applied to be considered for appointment to the U.S. Senate seat vacated by the death of Daniel Inouye, but despite support from prominent mainland Democrats, she was not among the 3 candidates the Democratic Party of Hawaii selected. Gabbard was re-elected on November 8, 2014, defeating Crowley again, by 142,010 to 33,630 votes. Libertarian candidate Joe Kent garnered 4,693 votes. PACs contributed $434,000 to Gabbard's 2014 campaign. Gabbard was re-elected on November 8, 2016, defeating her Republican opponent, Angela Kahu, by 170,848 to 39,668 votes. PACs contributed $465,000 to her 2016 campaign. Gabbard was re-elected in 2018, defeating her Republican opponent, Brian Evans, by 153,271 to 44,850 votes. Tenure. Gabbard is the first Samoan American voting member of the United States Congress and the first Hindu member of the United States Congress. In her first term, Gabbard introduced the Helping Heroes Fly Act, seeking to improve airport security screenings for severely wounded veterans. It passed Congress and was signed into law by President Barack Obama. She also led an effort to pass legislation to assist victims of military sexual trauma. Along with Senator Hirono, Gabbard introduced a bill to award Filipino and Filipino American veterans who fought in World War II the Congressional Gold Medal. The bill passed Congress and was signed into law by Obama in December 2016. Gabbard also introduced Talia's Law to prevent child abuse and neglect on military bases. It was passed by Congress and signed into law by Obama in December 2016. In 2017, Gabbard introduced the Off Fossil Fuels Act, which set a target of 2035 for transitioning the United States to renewable energy. It was endorsed by Food and Water Watch. In 2018, Gabbard introduced the Securing America's Election Act, a bill to require all districts to use paper ballots, yielding an auditable paper trail in the event of a recount. Common Cause endorsed the bill. When the Mueller report failed to find that members of Trump's 2016 campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government, Gabbard called this a good thing for America. She subsequently reintroduced her election security bill, arguing that it would make foreign interference less likely to occur in 2020. Committee assignments. Caucus membership. Democratic National Committee. On January 22, 2013, Gabbard was elected to a 4-year term as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. She was critical of Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's decision to hold only 6 debates during the 2016 Democratic Party presidential primaries, compared with 26 in 2008 and 15 in 2004. Along with Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Ryback and 2 candidates, Gabbard called for more debates, appearing on multiple news outlets to express her dissatisfaction with the reduction in the number. Later she was either disinvited or asked to consider not coming to the Democratic debate in Las Vegas as a consequence. In a phone interview with The New York Times, Gabbard spoke of an unhealthy atmosphere and the feeling that she had checked at the door in taking the job. Gabbard resigned as DNC vice chair on February 28, 2016, in order to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for the nomination. She was the first Congresswoman to endorse Sanders and later gave the nominating speech putting his name forward at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. In July 2016, Gabbard launched a petition to end the Democratic Party's process of appointing superdelegates in the nomination process. She endorsed Keith Ellison for DNC chair in the 2017 chairmanship elections. 2020 presidential campaign. Gabbard was mentioned as a possible presidential candidate in 2016, and was assigned as Bernie Sanders's running mate in California for any write-in votes for Sanders. In May 2017, Gabbard announced that she had stopped accepting money from the defense industry and from PACs. In her first 3 terms, she accepted just under $120,000 from military-industrial complex donors like BAE Systems, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman and Raytheon. On February 2, 2019, Gabbard officially launched her 2020 presidential campaign, saying that it was in the spirit of service above self that she announced her candidacy. CNN described her foreign policy platform as anti-interventionalist and her economic platform as populist. After Gabbard announced her candidacy, RT, Sputnik News, and Russia Insider ran around 20 stories favorable to her. NBC News reported that these outlets attempted to interfere in the 2016 United States elections. In Rolling Stone magazine, Matt Taibbi called the NBC report a transparent hit piece. Likewise, in The Intercept, Glenn Greenwald criticized NBC's McCarthyite storyline and use of a cybersecurity firm as a source, because the company had participated in what it alternately called a false flag operation or an experiment against a Republican candidate during the 2018 U.S. legislative election. Gabbard was the most frequently Googled candidate after both the first and second 2020 Democratic debates. Nonprofit organizations and associations. Gabbard and her father co-founded Healthy Hawaii, iCoalition, an environmental educational group. Gabbard was also a co-founder of the nonprofit Stand Up for America, which she and her father co-founded in the wake of the September 11, 2001 attacks. SUFA's website profiled Gabbard and hosted letters from her sent during her deployments overseas. In September 2010, SUFA's website came under criticism for promoting her campaign for the Honolulu City Council. Gabbard said the improper addition was an honest mistake from a volunteer, and the page and link in question were immediately removed. She is a former member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Political positions campaign finance. As of 2017, Gabbard had received about $1.30 million in special interest contributions. In 2017 she pledged to no longer accept money from political action committees. In October 2018 The Intercept reported that she was one of only 4 members of Congress who had pledged not to accept corporate campaign donations. Economy. In 2012 Gabbard supported the reinstatement of the Glass-Steagall Act. In 2018 Gabbard voted with the minority against a bill that she said worked to undo state-level legislation seeking to curb maximum interest rates on loans. She said that interest rates could reach an annual percentage rate of 459% in Hawaii, which has no such state-level legislation. In 2017 Gabbard supported a bill to increase the hourly minimum wage to $15 by 2024. Gabbard has voted for audit the Federal Reserve legislation. Gabbard has called for breaking up big technology companies. Education. Gabbard supports making community college tuition free for all Americans while making all 4-year colleges tuition free for students with an annual family income of $125,000 or less. The free tuition would be funded by a new tax on trading stocks and bonds. Environment. Gabbard received the Sierra Club Hawaii chapter's endorsement in the 2012 Democratic primary election for Congress and in her 2014 re-election campaign. In December 2016 Gabbard, along with approximately 2,000 U.S. military veterans dubbed the Veterans Stand for Standing Rock, traveled to North Dakota to join the protests against the construction of the final leg of the Dakota Access Pipeline near the Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Indian reservations. In September 2017 she introduced legislation seeking to transition the United States to clean renewable energy. The bill would require electric utilities to transition to 80% renewable energy resources by 2027 and 100% renewable by 2035, while setting similar vehicle emission standards goals and banning hydraulic fracturing. In November 2018 Gabbard spoke in favor of a Green New Deal, which was at the time a draft resolution to task a special House committee with coming up with legislation to eliminate fossil fuel use from the economy within a decade. In February 2019 she expressed concerns about the version of the Green New Deal proposed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey, saying, "I have some concerns with the Green New Deal, and about some of the vagueness of the language in there, so have not co-sponsored the legislation." Foreign policy. Gabbard has described herself as both a hawk and a dove. Asked if there were any wars that justified the use of U.S. military force, Gabbard said there are very few examples and cited World War II, Afghanistan. At the Democratic debate on July 31, 2019, Gabbard accused President Trump of continuing to betray Americans by repeatedly walking back his plans to withdraw from Afghanistan, adding that withdrawing American troops from Afghanistan was about leadership instead of arbitrary deadlines. Gabbard said she would withdraw troops from Afghanistan during her first year as president and cited the need for the United States to do the right thing and end the wasteful regime change wars and bring our troops home. Counterterrorism. Following her 2017 visit to Syria, Gabbard opposed U.S. involvement in regime change, calling it counterproductive to defeating ISIL, Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. She criticized the Obama administration for refusing to say that Islamic extremists are waging a war against the United States. She has said, "Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11 and must be defeated. Obama won't bomb them in Syria. Putin did." She proposed the Stop Arming Terrorists Act to force the CIA to stop aiding militants in Syria by banning federal funding for Al-Qaeda, Jabhat Fateh al-Sham, and ISIL. The bill has 14 co-sponsors. Gabbard's views on Islamic terrorism have distinguished her from the views of mainstream Democrats. In 2015, she met with U.S.-backed authoritarian Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to discuss the threat of ISIS and Islamic extremist groups, 2 years after he led the August 2013 Rabaa massacre which killed hundreds of civilians. She has advocated increasing pressure on Pakistan to stop terrorist attacks and expressed solidarity with India in reference to the 2016 Uri attack. India. Gabbard supports a strong U.S.-India relationship. She has repeatedly praised Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister and leader of the ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, and advocated for closer ties with him. Her support has led some critics to charge that she is too close to Modi and to Hindu nationalists in India. She has disputed claims that she is partial to the BJP or to any other political party in India, and has stated that she has met with officials from both parties. Gabbard was sharply critical of the U.S. decision to deny a visa to Modi over allegations of his involvement in the 2002 Gujarat riots, calling it a great blunder that could have undermined the U.S.-India relationship. In 2013 she joined some of her colleagues on the House Foreign Affairs Committee in opposing a House resolution that called for continuing the ban on Modi and for religious freedom and related human rights to be included in the United States-India Strategic Dialogue and for such issues to be raised directly with federal and state Indian government officials. The bill admonished India to protect the rights and freedoms of religious minorities, and specifically referenced incidents of mass violence against India's Muslim minority that took place during Modi's tenure. Gabbard justified her opposition by saying the resolution would weaken the friendship between India and the US and citing the bill's timing as interfering with India's elections, while emphasizing the need for the US to stand for religious freedom. She later also said that there was a lot of misinformation that surrounded the event in 2002. 5 months later, President Obama lifted the ban and invited Modi to visit him in the White House. Days before it began, Gabbard reiterated she was withdrawing from the 2018 World Hindu Congress, expressing concern over a significant number of Indian partisan politicians playing an important role at the event. She had earlier written to an organizer of the event to voice concern that it was becoming a platform for Indian partisan politics. In January 2019, The Intercept published an article claiming Gabbard had links with Hindu nationalist organization Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America and the Hindu American Foundation. In a response, she rebutted claims she is a Hindu nationalist, calling it religious bigotry, and writing, "My meetings with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India's democratically elected leader, have been highlighted as proof of this and portrayed as somehow being out of the ordinary or somehow suspect, even though President Obama, Secretary Clinton, President Trump and many of my colleagues in Congress have met with and worked with him." An earlier version of The Intercept's article searched Gabbard's donor list for names of Hindu origin to show Gabbard's broad base of support in the Hindu American community. Gabbard criticized this as religious bigotry, saying that Christians would not be subject to such scrutiny based on their names. The Intercept removed the sentence with an apology, saying that it was not intended to question the motives of those political donors and apologizing for any such implication. Iran. Gabbard voted in favor of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, an agreement with Iran that imposed restraints on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of nuclear-related sanctions against Iran. She opposes the Trump administration's decision to withdraw from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and stated that as president she would re-enter the agreement, but also negotiate on remaining issues in order to find a diplomatic solution and de-escalate tensions. In May 2019, Gabbard warned about the danger, costs, and consequences of a potential war with Iran and criticized the Trump administration for elevating tensions. She said it would be illegal for the Trump administration to rely on a 2001 law that authorized the use of U.S. armed forces against those responsible for the September 11 attacks and any associated forces. U.S. military interventions. Gabbard considers the 2003 invasion of Iraq to have been a disaster in part because victorious withdrawal after removing Saddam Hussein from power was complicated by civil war. She also opposed the NATO-led military intervention in Libya in 2011 and has called for an end to the nearly 2 decades-long U.S. war in Afghanistan. Israel. Gabbard supports a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. In March 2015, unlike 58 other Democrats, she did not boycott Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the U.S. Congress, saying at the time that relations must rise above the political fray, as America continues to stand with Israel as her strongest ally. On July 14, 2015, Gabbard attended the Christians United for Israel, a conservative-leaning organization. In January 2017, Gabbard voted against a House resolution condemning the UN Security Council resolution on Israeli settlements built on the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank. She said, "While I remain concerned about aspects of the UN resolution, I share the Obama administration's reservation about the harmful impact Israeli settlement activity has on the prospects for peace." She criticized Israel's use of live ammunition along the Gaza fence in May 2018. Saudi Arabia. Gabbard opposed a $1.15 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. She has said, the U.S. must stop arming Saudi Arabia, stop fueling this fire and hold Saudi Arabia accountable for their actions. Gabbard has called for ending U.S. support for the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, saying the U.S. is complicit in a humanitarian disaster. In September 2018 she supported a legislation invoking the War Powers Resolution of 1973 to stop U.S. involvement in the war. In November 2018, after Trump indicated the U.S. would not sanction Saudi Arabia over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, Gabbard tweeted at Trump, "Being Saudi Arabia's bitch is not America first." Syria. In 2013, Gabbard opposed the Obama administration's proposed military strikes in Syria and introduced legislation to block CIA activities in Syria and U.S. military action against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. In March 2016, Gabbard was one of 3 members of Congress to vote against House Resolution 121, which condemned the government of Syria and other parties to the conflict for war crimes and crimes against humanity, saying that though Assad is a brutal dictator, the resolution was a war bill, a thinly veiled attempt to use the rationale of humanitarianism as a justification for overthrowing the Syrian government. In November 2016 she met with United States President-elect Donald Trump in an effort to convince him of her point of view. In 2017 Gabbard cited U.S. regime change involvement in Syria as a source of the Syrian refugee crisis. In January 2017 Gabbard had an unplanned meeting with Assad during a trip to Syria and Lebanon. She reportedly did not inform House leadership of her trip in advance. Gabbard said in a press release that the House Ethics Committee approved the trip and the Arab American Community Center for Economic and Social Services paid for it. She later paid for the trip with her own money. On February 7, 2017, it was reported that Gabbard had not filed the required disclosure forms by the deadline, but according to her office she complied with House ethics rules by filing her post-trip financial report by the deadline. Remaining forms and her itinerary were submitted the next day. Gabbard said that the Syrian people's message was powerful and consistent. There is no difference between moderate rebels and al-Qaeda or ISIS, they are all the same. She described the Syrian conflict as a war between terrorists under the command of groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda and the Syrian government. In April 2017 Gabbard expressed skepticism that evidence then available had shown that Assad ordered the use of chemical weapons against Syrian civilians. Following the Khan Sheikhan chemical attack, Gabbard called for a UN investigation into the attack and prosecution of Assad by the International Criminal Court should he be found responsible. After Trump ordered the 2017 Shayrat missile strike targeting the Syrian airfield believed to be the source of the attack, Gabbard called the strike reckless and was skeptical that Assad was responsible for the attack, which led to sharp criticism from former Democratic National Committee Chairman Howard Dean as well as Center for American Progress President Neera Tanden. In a 2018 interview with The Nation, Gabbard said the United States had been waging a regime change war in Syria since 2011. Central to that war to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, along with our allies Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, has been providing direct and indirect support to terrorist organizations like al-Qaeda. In February 2019 Gabbard said there was no disputing the fact that has used chemical weapons and other weapons against his people. In a 2019 interview with CNN's Chris Cuomo, Gabbard said of Assad, "He's a brutal dictator. Just like Saddam Hussein. Just like Gaddafi in Libya. The reason that I'm so outspoken on this issue of ending these wasteful regime change wars is because I have seen firsthand this high human cost of war and the impact that it has on my fellow brothers and sisters in uniform, torture." In a December 2014 interview Gabbard said she was conflicted about the report published that week on the CIA's use of torture in interrogations, saying that the jury is still out on the report. She also said that while she abhorred torture, were there an imminent danger to American citizens, she, as president, would do everything in power to keep the American people safe. In a February 2019 interview with Status Quo host Jordan Chariton, Gabbard said, "Through my time on the Armed Services Committee in Congress over the last 5 years, I've supported amendments to the defense bill that ban torture, ban these enhanced interrogation techniques, and as president will continue to strongly oppose torture and the use of those techniques." Trans-Pacific Partnership. Gabbard opposed the Trans-Pacific Partnership and led protests against it. A member of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, she criticized both the deal itself and the secrecy surrounding the negotiations, arguing that it would primarily benefit multinational corporations and be a detriment to American workers and the environment. Health care. Gabbard supports universal health care. She co-sponsored a bill that would create a government-run system to provide health care for all residents of the United States, in part paid for by hiking taxes on the wealthy and taxing financial transactions. Immigration. Gabbard has been described as out of step with other Democrats on immigration. In 2015 she voted with congressional Republicans in favor of a bill requiring extreme vetting of Syrian and Iraqi refugees. The Obama administration said the bill would effectively stop the resettlement of Syrian refugees in the United States. That same year she called for a suspension of the visa waiver program for European passport holders. Labeling GMOs. In 2013 Gabbard sponsored legislation to require GMO labeling. In 2016 she voted against a GMO labeling bill, saying that it was too weak. Gun rights. Gabbard has an inconsistent record on gun control issues, having taken a less aggressive approach than other Democrats, and received $400 in contributions from the gun industry during her Honolulu City Council campaign. She has co-sponsored bills that would ban assault weapons and institute background checks for all gun purchases. In March 2017 Gabbard was one of the few Democratic representatives to vote for the National Rifle Association-supported Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, which would have essentially blocked the Department of Veterans Affairs from notifying the National Instant Criminal Background Check System that a veteran was mentally incompetent after determining they are unable to manage their own finances. LGBT rights. Gabbard opposed civil unions and same-sex marriage in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when she was a teenager and in her early 20s. She worked with her father's PAC, the Alliance for Traditional Marriage, to pass a constitutional amendment to protect traditional marriage. Campaigning for her first political office a few years later, she cited her experience with her state senator father's Political Action Committee, which opposed pro-LGBT lawmakers and laws and promoted conversion therapy. The Alliance for Traditional Marriage spent more than $100,000 opposing LGBT rights. In her campaign for the Hawaii legislature in 2002, she vowed to pass a constitutional amendment to protect traditional marriage. As a Hawaii state legislator in 2004, Gabbard argued against civil unions, saying, "To try to act as if there is a difference between civil unions and same-sex marriage is dishonest, cowardly and extremely disrespectful to the people of Hawaii who have already made overwhelmingly clear our position on this issue. As Democrats we should be representing the views of the people, not a small number of homosexual extremists." She opposed Hawaii House Bill 1024, which would have established legal parity between same-sex couples in civil unions and married straight couples, and led a protest against the bill outside the room where the House Judiciary Committee held the hearing. The same year she expressed her opposition to Hawaii undertaking research on LGBT students, arguing that it would be a violation of their privacy and that many parents would see the study as an indirect attempt by government to encourage young people to question their sexual orientation. She also disputed that Hawaii schools were rampant with anti-gay discrimination. In 2012 Gabbard said that she believed same-sex marriage should be legalized throughout the United States and apologized for her prior anti-LGBT stance. She has since worked to advance LGBT rights. Gabbard credited her tours of duty in the Middle East for her change in views. She co-sponsored the Equality Act. The Human Rights Campaign gave her a score of 100 for her votes during the 115th Congress, with scores of 88 and 92 for the previous two sessions, respectively. She has opposed both the Defense of Marriage Act and a proposed state constitutional amendment to define marriage as between a woman and a man. In June 2015 she issued a statement supporting Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court ruling that same-sex marriage bans are unconstitutional, arguing that the United States was not a theocracy. After launching her presidential campaign in January 2019, Gabbard again apologized for her past anti-LGBT rights positions and statements, saying that her views had changed as her experience outside of a socially conservative home grew. Religious freedom. During Brian C. Buescher's confirmation hearing for U.S. District Court in Nebraska, Gabbard wrote an op-ed on the Hill's Congress blog arguing that while she personally opposed Buescher's nomination, her opposition was not based on his association with the Catholic Church or the Knights of Columbus. Any opposition to Buescher based on his association with these religious institutions would, in her view, amount to religious bigotry and would violate Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. Reproductive rights and abortion. Gabbard supports reproductive rights, including federal funding for abortion. She opposed abortion earlier in her career, but changed her mind. Opposition to prosecuting Assange and Snowden. Gabbard has stated that the U.S. government should drop charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange and pardon NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, taking action to close the loopholes in the law Snowden exposed. Trump administration. On November 21, 2016, Gabbard became the second Democrat to meet with President-elect Donald Trump and his transition team at Trump Tower. She described the meeting as frank and positive, and said she accepted the meeting to influence Trump before Republicans grew in influence and escalated the war to overthrow the Syrian government. She later called the Trump administration's 2017 Shayrat missile strike reckless and short-sighted. Gabbard did not join the 169 congressional Democrats who signed a letter of opposition to Steve Bannon's appointment as Trump's chief strategist, but she joined 182 other colleagues to co-sponsor a bill to remove him from the National Security Council. Gabbard vehemently criticized the 2017 United States-Saudi Arabia arms deal and the administration's decision not to sanction Saudi Arabia over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Personal life. Gabbard's first name comes from Sanskrit. Tulsi is the name for holy basil, a plant sacred in Hinduism. Her siblings also have Hindu Sanskrit origin names. During her childhood, Gabbard excelled in martial arts, and was interested in gardening. She is a surfer and an accomplished athlete. In 2002 she was a martial arts instructor. She is a vegetarian and, as a Hindu, follows Gaudiya Vaishnavism, a religious movement founded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 16th century. Gabbard describes herself as a karma yogi. She values the Bhagavad Gita as a spiritual guide, and used it when she took the oath of office in 2013. Gabbard has said that she is pleased that her election gives hope to young American Hindus who can be open about their faith, and even run for office, without fear of being discriminated against or attacked because of their religion. In 2002 Gabbard married Eduardo Tamayo. They divorced in 2006. She cites the stresses war places on military spouses and families as a reason for their divorce. In 2015 Gabbard married freelance cinematographer and editor Abraham Williams. Awards and honors. On November 25, 2013, Gabbard received the John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award at a ceremony at the Institute of Politics at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government for her efforts on behalf of veterans. On March 26, 2014, Elle honored Gabbard, with others, at the Italian Embassy in the United States during its annual Women in Washington Power list. On July 15, 2015, Gabbard received the Friend of the National Parks Award from the National Parks Conservation Association.